I kind of went on a whim. Like I could just feel like downtown Sacramento, 2011, like the world had kind of shit on it a lot, but you had this beautiful hotel and you had Grange, which was doing well, and you could tell the city was trying to do something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time for me to start because restaurants were kind of fighting hard for relevance and the city had started noticing it too. So it was a really cool time to be part of the growth of Sacramento and what it was trying to do. 2 years later that we did the first bridge dinner. But
Hello and welcome to the Dine 16, a food podcast about Sacramento, where we take you behind the scenes and introduce you to some of the people who are making your favorite dining experiences happen. I'm your host, Max Connor, joined as always by my friend and co-host, Neil Little. Neil, what's going on, man? How was your weekend?
Man, I had a fantastic weekend. So back in January, I got the opportunity to go out to Savannah, Georgia and visit my parents out there. And while we were out there, my dad and I obviously went and looked at the Savannah Bananas. For those of you that don't know what the Savannah Bananas are, one, they're the greatest sports team of all time. And I will not back down on that statement. They are basically the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. Yes, we can all admit baseball is boring, but these guys just make it so fun and so engaging. And so I got the opportunity because they were in Sacramento this weekend to actually go and work for them. So I spent Friday and Saturday out at Rayleigh Field. Pardon me, let me take that back. Sutter Field. And got to participate in their merchandise sales there and get to hang out with all the people working. And they were just some of the most lovely people I've ever met. And if you get the opportunity, anyone, to go see the Savannah Bananas, I cannot express that you have to go see them. They're just a wonderful, awesome, great time.
Well, that does sound fun, although I am a huge baseball fan, so I take great offense to baseball being called boring. Although I have often been called boring, so maybe it's just a match made in heaven that I'm a baseball fan. But that sounds cool. The Savannah Bananas are doing something really fun, and hey, any way we can engage more people in baseball, even if it's a silly version of it, I'm all for it. So Neil, today is another big episode for us. This is someone, when you first joined the podcast, we knew was a guest we would have on at some point, someone you know really well, someone you're really close to, and also one of the real powerhouses here in Sacramento in the culinary community.
Yeah, this person I'm bringing on, I would arguably call him basically like my older brother from another mother. We are bringing Oliver Ridgeway on today. I have known Oliver since 2018 when I helped open up his lovely restaurant, which if you have not been to, I'm sure you have heard me talk about over 1 billion times, but you should definitely go there. But I got to work through Oliver through a lot of fun and difficult times, and really just to get to see him operate behind the scenes. I'm just so honored to have worked with him and also honored to be able to call him a close friend.
Yeah, and I have to say, quick trigger warning for any middle-aged folks out there who have regrets about their past life and how they lived their 20s and 30s. This might send you into a tailspin listening to Oliver's story because it is fun and entertaining, and in many ways, he lived a life that many of us probably wish we had lived. So let's jump into our interview with Oliver Ridgeway of Camden Spit and Larder. Well, Oliver Ridgeway, thank you so much for being here on the Dine 16. It's great to have you.
great to be here. I'm excited.
So we always start the show by asking, what was food like growing up in the home for you?
So I had two lives. Parents were divorced. Mother, very low income. So I grew up on some real humble meals with her, which I still fondly think of. I think we all do have sort of fond meals that your mother made. So that was kind of basic weekday meals, low budget, nothing creative. And then my father was in the restaurant business. So kind of growing up with him, definitely more of a creative flair on food. And then my grandparents, I'm on his side, were very into food as well. So it was kind of two worlds, both fond memories, but yeah, on my mother's side, definitely humble, low income stuff that I still crave now.
What do you remember in particular? What are some dishes that
God, so she would do like literally a corned beef hash, and we're not talking the hash that you can visualize. It was literally mashed potatoes with canned corned beef folded into it, and not fried, right? So you've got this mashed potato with corned beef mixed into it, and then Heinz baked beans. And that was like a meal that, you know, kind of in Larder stoner life, you can imagine how delicious that could be. But she would do, you know, the bangers and mash and kind of like a deconstructed shepherd's pie. She wouldn't actually build the pie, but she would make the meat sauce and then have the potatoes and the frozen peas and stuff. But just, there was always plenty to eat. And I was back there last year, actually, and she cooked up something that took me right back. And I didn't realize how salty the food used to be. Well, that's kind of sodium and chicken base. And
Canned corn, canned, corned beef.
Canned anything.
It's about as salty.
Anything.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, all of it. But on the father's side, he was vegetarian for a lot of the time I was growing up. So I actually got introduced to kind of healthy preparations of vegetables and creativity without having meat, which was nice. So from an early age, I understood that meat doesn't always have to be the main play on a plate. So he would make really nice nut roasts and curries and all kinds of stuff like that. So I kind of saw two worlds. I think that definitely sparked an interest in food being something that you can create your own journey on.
That's cool. What capacity did your dad work in restaurants? Was he in the kitchen or was he an owner or manager?
So he was never a trained chef, but he, back in the 80s, like pubs in England, my first home was a pub. They would have carveries because the Sunday roast is a big thing in England. So you'd have this kind of traditional public house serving the real ale and all of that. But then you'd have almost like a buffet on the weekend where someone would be carving the turkey and the roast beef, and then you'd have the chafing dish with all the sides. And in the week, you'd have more a la carte options, just sandwiches and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it started. And then he started toying around with pizza. And then he was, back in the early 80s, had the first ever pizza restaurant in my hometown in England called Pizza Park. And so he started kind of a little pizza empire there and ended up having a few outlets and then kind of all started there. He ended up having a vegetarian restaurant later in life as well.
Wow.
And then he started he studied to become a hypnotherapist, which he's done for the last 30 years. I think he works enough with enough messed up food and beverage people that he thought that they all need help. And then he got out and started doing therapy for
Just give out business cards at the bar.
That's
like,
right.
you need help.
Yeah.
But I used to work in the restaurants washing dishes at 14 and 15. And, I was definitely exposed to some late nights and the kind of the antics of food and beverage at a young age, which kind of seemed a bit rock and roll to me back then. And I always thought, this is cool.
Yeah.
Little did he know what was happening to me when he left and I was with a bunch of 20-somethings in a kitchen.
Right. That's right.
Any age in a kitchen, yeah.
Yeah.
So you said your first job in the restaurant was washing dishes, which is very important in a restaurant. Was it more of you were forced in there, or did you want to get in there and experience it?
A little bit of both. I think my first job I did was like delivering papers, but it was like a local newspaper. It wasn't like the select, you want to get the New York Times. It was like the one that goes through every single doorstep in the whole town, like a bucket of newspapers going through the rain, and it was horrible. But then my dad was like, you're probably old enough to work in the restaurant. You can wash dishes. So I'd work like Thursday, Friday nights, just plates in and pots and pans and had my music on. Just, got into it and then started doing a little bit of prep work, and that's how it all started, really. I think it was just by default of me not wanting to do newspapers anymore.
Do you remember sort of a shift where you said, maybe this, you saw your dad obviously working food, so you knew food could be a career, but tell us about the shift from sort of working in pubs, working in restaurants to looking towards this could be a long-term career.
Well, it's kind of, you go through that high school and everyone's kind of making decisions what they want to do. And a lot of my friends went on to sort of sixth form, continue the academics. At that time, I feel that I was pretty immature on the education side of things. School just didn't fascinate me, sitting in classrooms. And so I ended up going to culinary school because it just seemed a natural progression. So I started doing, basic fundamentals there and did that for a couple of years. And then I was supposed to go back for a third year for another qualification, but I'd already started working in professional kitchens by then, and I never went back. So, and then I did have kind of a weak spot when I was in my second job, which was really a great grand hotel down in Brighton, but all my friends had then gone off to university. So they're all around the country, getting further education, having all the wild parties and while I was working kind of minimum wage, weekends, nights, just like getting my teeth kicked in. And I was like, did I make the right decision here?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like maybe I should go off to further my education and, get my head back in books. But I had a chef at the time. But he's like, I had talked to him. I was like, I'm kind of lost. And he said, you should go and work on the Queen Elizabeth II, which is at the time the most iconic cruise liner going. And so I kind of teed myself up and got an interview. I had long hair at the time, got my hair cut, and went through this interview process and ended up getting a job, which is another story, which is how my real professional career kicked off, is when I went on board that ship. So
let's take off on the QE2 here, because I'm very interested. And also, I would love for you to compare, what is it like working on a boat when you're confined at sea for multiple days at a time versus at a hotel or a restaurant where, you have access to everything and people come to you? How are those similar and different?
So I don't know how they do it now. There's these massive cruise kind of luxury Caribbean hotel floating around, and the Queen Elizabeth was a cruise liner, right? It was doing the Titanic's route. It was Cunard Lines, and still had a class system. Sort of your class of ticket determined where you were eating and where your accommodation was. But for me, going on there, it was, talk about ship shape. It was a lot of German, French, and Austrian chefs. Very stiff hierarchy. You had an expectation on how you kept your living quarters, and then how you conducted yourself in the kitchen. I was kind of a cocky 20-year-old. And I learned pretty quick that attitude wasn't going to work. So for me, it was just an extreme level of discipline, and you work 7 days a week, and there's nowhere really to escape. But ironically, the crew bar, which they don't do on any of these modern ships now, it was 50 cents for a beer, $1 for a pack of cigarettes, and $8 for a bottle of liquor. It was just party time in the quarters, in the employee quarters. I could tell you some stories, but but for me, that discipline, just being constantly corrected, there was no it's okay. It's no, you're fucking hungover, get your shit together. Otherwise you're out, you're done. So I kind of learned very quickly that, in my mind, it soon became very apparent, okay, so if I do a really good job, he's going to get off my ass. And then all of a sudden I'm getting better at my job, and now people respect me. And now I'm and then all of a sudden, I got promoted on there to a demi-chef de partie. And then I'm okay, this is what you have to do. And then follow instructions, do it well, get better, and just keep pushing. And then that was when I started and then I started enjoying it, because then you start knowing that you can conduct yourself in a certain way. It gets recognized by your peers, and the people are eating your food. And then cooks around you see that you're kind of excelling too. And then it becomes kind of an adrenaline thing. And so I got on there at 20, left when I was 22, and I was a different person.
What was the food like on that ship?
Very European. And if you can imagine, you did the classic transatlantic, which would be the 6 days from Southampton to New York, which is another thing, right? At 20, 21, by the time I got off that ship, I'd been around the world.
Yeah.
I'd done many transatlantic crossings from Southampton to New York. I'd done Caribbean, Canada, the Mediterranean, Norway, through the Panama Canal, all the way over to Asia and Australia.
Wow.
And some of these were pockets, repetitive cruises and stuff, but that transatlantic, you're at sea for 6 days and there's no getting off, and you're going across the freaking Atlantic, which sometimes calm, sometimes not so calm, but your menus are dictated on what that cruise is. So if you're there on a 6 day crossing across the Atlantic, those menus are breakfast, lunch, dinner, changing every single day, because you've got to keep your guests engaged. And so the food was very European heavy, but as you would go down the Caribbean, there'd be a Caribbean flair, or if you were in Norway, there'd be a Norwegian flair, or wherever you were, there was definitely an influence on what was going on. But everything was made in-house too. It was all very, very classic. I worked on garmanger or, pâtés, terrines, kind of cold preparations. That was very beautiful. And then I moved into a vegetable station in the Queen's Grill, which was their fine dining restaurant, which you can imagine every single day a menu would change, and every single plate that went out had a vegetable garnish and a starch garnish, which was my responsibility. And then you had people with special dietary things that you'd have to do on, like, you'd start learning that. So you were just, it would be funny, like, you'd have, like, breaks in the day that they said that you could take a break, but you never got a break.
Right.
Your list was like this long.
Yeah.
And if you went to the crew bar and you're out till 3 a.m. and you're back in the kitchen at 7 a.m, you're just, like, hating life.
Oh, man.
But yeah, learn a lot. And because you're repetitively cooking all day, every day,
Yeah.
like your repertoire is just getting full because you're just changing menus constantly. And then menus start repeating. You're like, oh, I know how to do that. And then you start looking at those menus coming up and then you start trying to advance prep yourself because you're like, oh, okay, I remember this was a real dick kicker for me. So I'm going to start working on that so I'm not in the shit that day. So definitely time management was key because your time management allows you to have free time. And if you wanted free time, you had to be on top of your shit. I think this industry requires as much as you put in, you will get out of it. But if you just want to coast it, then you'll just be a victim of your own demise. But that's what kind of learnt me. And just seeing the world, I remember the first time, just that morning, that first morning that you're just about to hit the crest of New York and you just see the Twin Towers and the Statue of Liberty and you grew up watching movies as a young Englishman and all of a sudden you're just going into New York City on this boat and you're just like, this place exists. It's not just on the movies.
Yeah.
And it's a disembarkation day, so you'd work breakfast and then you'd be off until the afternoon, so you could just go off into the city for the day, which was just amazing. But that would happen often, and when we stopped in ports, you could be anywhere in the world and get the afternoon off, and you were just like, yeah, it was cool. It's kind of trippy, really, right? You like wake up and you're in like
We're here.
all these postcards you see as a kid and all these like things you watch. You're like, you're there. You're just like, holy shit.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Having gotten to work for Oliver for the past few years, it's really cool to see and understand his training and his upbringing now in the kitchen. And I see so many of those things in the kitchen now with Oliver. He is very diligent about getting his lists out for his prep cooks in the morning. He overly communicates in a good way on what his expectations are each day. And you can really see how he learned those things, especially from the Germans and the Austrians, as he mentioned on the boat. I mean, there is no late on a boat.
That's right.
There's no excuse for it. You're already there. So seeing how Oliver takes things very seriously and has high expectations, but they're reasonable expectations as well. And it's really cool and fun to learn those things about him.
Yeah, and just what an amazing experience to get to travel all over the world, to get to cook. I mean, I can't think of a better training ground for a chef than to be stuck on a boat, cooking 3 meals a day, constantly rotating menu, different styles all the time, all with this organization that you have to have. It's just an ideal scenario to really learn how to cook, how to be organized, and how to learn all these different cuisines in that fashion.
And one of the other interesting things about the boating community, like the restaurant community, it is a very tight-knit, small community. So when you meet people in there, you have that connection for the rest of your life. And as you'll hear later on in this interview, those connections are pretty big in Oliver's life and come back to play a major role.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, his next big job was due to a connection to the QE2. So we'll move things forward a bit. Oliver went back to England, and after a time was with a friend that he worked on the QE2 and decided the Sydney Olympics are coming up. The 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia are coming up. Maybe we could find our way there to work at the Olympics. And so they worked in London at different restaurants, saving money with a plan to go to Sydney. And that friend of his knew the woman from the QE2 who became the executive chef of the new stadium in Sydney, where they were doing Australian rules football and all these other events, and they were going to host a bunch of events for the Olympics. And they flew to Sydney, and he was able to interview for a job and got a job cooking for VIPs, huge dinners, both performers and companies, at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. And talk about an experience. That's where we're going to jump back into the interview of some of the people he cooked for and some of the fun he had cooking at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney.
But that was fun, we were doing VIP sponsors. I was responsible for a lot of suites there. So you had all these big name companies like Rupert Murdoch had huge suites there, Deutsche Bank, Visa, and we were doing all their kind of corporate suites, and everything had been like planned out. We had like books full of dishes and what was in them and how they should look. And, you're just like satellite kitchens and good food though. You know, people were paying top dollar, if you can imagine. I did the VIP performers there opening night. I saw the opening ceremony 3 times because they did 2 rehearsals and then the live one. But, you know, we did all the food for like Olivia Newton-John and what's his name? Crocodile Dundee, Paul Hogan and all the famous Aussie people that were part of the opening ceremony. We had a suite for them and that was kind of fun. But yeah, it was just great being in Sydney and doing something of that magnitude, right? Like an Olympics. And
there's not much grandeur, in my opinion, is there? I mean, that's kind of, I feel like, once every 4 years, that doesn't come around.
It was
often.
amazing too, and just being part of it. And you know, you had opportunities to watch certain races, and you could you soon learned your little hiding places. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and you know, living in Sydney too, and just kind of doing stages at local restaurants, and just living over there was just it was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I just imagining both those experiences, the scale of not only how much food you're cooking, but just
the expectation.
The expectation, plus the execution, plus the number of recipes to go through, you know, a cruise liner that's constantly changing. To go to the Olympics where you're not running a little restaurant, you're constantly changing. Well, and you have VIPs, which I can only imagine, you know, they get the menu ahead of time, but then are probably saying, I don't like this, I want this. I mean, just so it sounds overwhelming. So, but you know,
it was, but you learn so much. I learned like large organization. I remember I was like 23, 24 then, and then my sous chef, he was a lovely guy, but he was out of his depth. And I was a chef de partie, so in the hierarchy of kind of European kitchens, you have a commis chef, which is entry level, a demi chef, which is kind of a in between, like you're beyond prepping and you can sort of deputize a station, and you have a chef de partie, which means you can run areas, and then you kind of go up to sous chefs, which means you manage a brigade. And but my sous chef, he was a sweet guy, but he was just out of his depth. But I started learning each day what we had to do. So I would come in the morning and I would like write the prep list, and he would just start up. Can I hold the line up, please? And he'd be like, okay. And then I would just be like, all right, you're doing this, you're doing that, I'm doing this, you're doing it. And like everyone's like, okay, good, you're good. Like, and then it was just like, that's when I started like learning to organize and plan my days really accordingly. And that's important too in any business you have. It's just like you've got to get your team organized before they get there. You can't just kind of figure it out when everyone's here. They need to know that someone's leading the march and that someone knows what the fuck's going on. Otherwise, they're just going to look at you and be like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed those organizational skills that I learned. Yeah, some of it was a bit repetitive and, you know, producing mass foods, but it was all part of creating recipes, organizing teams, writing prep lists, storing things correctly. Obviously, the hygiene and health criteria was huge in an event that big, and you know, you definitely had a certain discipline. And
so, do you have any specific, just amazing memories from working the Olympics? Whether they're sort of seeing athletic achievements or
athletic achievements for sure. Torpedo, I think. What was his name? Ian Thorpe.
Ian Thorpe.
Yeah, he was definitely the top of the medalists there. There was a Aboriginal runner. I forget her name now. I can see her face, but she broke some records. And just the camaraderie, the friends I met there, like a lot of Australians. One of my friends to this day, Jody, she was ended up being my girlfriend there, but she was the executive chef at Deer Valley in Park City, Utah, which is how I ended up doing the Winter Games. But she had come home for a summer because she was a big skier, so she would do the opposite hemisphere, so she could ski in the different times. Yes, but she had been working in Deer Valley for 6 years, and she had been promoted on her return. She was going to be an executive chef of Deer Valley at Snow Park, and I met her there, and we really bonded over the Olympic Games, and we hung out, and she would take me on trips around New South Wales and all of that. But when she finally went back to America, I ended up staying until the end of my time of my contract and my visa. But yeah, she's the one that ended up recruiting me for the Winter Games in Salt Lake, which was on Park City, which I'd never thought of doing either. But yeah, memories of Sydney itself are just the people, the food, the beaches, the history, the just being on the road and like being in a camp van and read so many books and just had some really cool like just experiences driving up and staying on these beaches and, you know, just people traveling. It was just a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many stories, probably so many inappropriate stories for this podcast, but being on the road for 6 to 8 weeks, just traveling up the east coast of Sydney and staying in all these hostels and yeah, you can imagine what goes along with that.
Right.
Well, that sounds like the dream when you're in your 20s.
Oh, it was.
100%.
Yeah.
So you came, is working the Winter Games what brought you to the States?
Also, I get back from Australia and then back home and kind of like, okay, you know, from kind of the ship to the whatever to the Australia. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to get back into British life again. And started looking for jobs, and then I went for a few interviews, did a few stages, and I don't know, I was just kind of like, I just wasn't really into it. At the time, my uncle, who's passed away now, but Brian Ridgeway, he was the CEO of a company called Discovery Foods in the UK, which was basically doing regional seasonal seasoning blends from around the world, right? Like, so you'd have a Southwest thing or a Mexican thing or an Indian thing, and like the El Paso kits that you see on.
Sure.
It was more of an upscale version of that. Like, let's get your Southwest kit. But he was buying seasonings from Chef Paul Prudhomme in New Orleans, Magic Seasoning Blends. So he had a good relationship with this restaurant in New Orleans. And I was talking to him, and he was just like, do you want me to call this guy and see if he's... So sure enough, he called the chef, and they said, yeah, bring him on over. So I bought a ticket and I flew to New Orleans, and which I'd never been to in my life, which is not the United States. When you've never really like get off the plane, and you know, all of a sudden it was late at night, and I actually stayed on the chef's compound, and so I kind of went into this little apartment, and next day went into the kitchen and got introduced to this whole kitchen. You know, I'd say it was 80% black, Southern black, and Chef Paul Prudhomme, which I didn't know at the time, was probably one of the first celebrity chefs in American cooking. And so his restaurant, K. Paul's Louisiana Kitchen, was, you know, a mecca down there. It was 2 floors of kitchen, 2 restaurants basically, but 1 restaurant. Downstairs was walk-ins, upstairs was reservations. So you were doing like 300 covers upstairs and 300 covers downstairs.
Holy shit.
They are cooking like upscale Cajun food. Like, it wasn't cheap, and we were making everything from scratch, and like that was another whole world of food I hadn't seen. Sort of French fundamentals and technique, but like with all these spices and smoke and chilies and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just this, at the time, a skinny little white guy from England working with a lot of locals too, and it was just like, that was just a culture shock for me. I had so much fun, but at first I was definitely I was the outcast for sure. I didn't understand what they were talking about. It was like, man, I need this downtown on the fly. And I worked up in all these like, you know, European kitchens. I'm like, what does he mean on the fly? What is this? What does this mean? And but so that was kind of a pivot there. I enjoyed it. I was really, you know, learning something new. I was in a city that was just insanely different to anything I'd ever experienced. And, you know, I was living just outside the French Quarter and had a bunch of new friends and was learning what New Orleans was all about and what Cajun food was about and what the culture was like down there. And at the time, Jody, my friend in Park City, had reached out and said, I'm going to apply for your visa process, so let's go and get that all working. I was working kind of under the radar in New Orleans on a tourist visa. But anyway, my time came to an end. I kind of did my 3 months did my 3 months on my tourist visa, and then I left to come home. And then we all remember that day.
Yep.
Right.
And those airplanes flew into the buildings, and I just remember working in this restaurant. So obviously this was on the shoulders of me going to America to do the Winter Games. So I didn't know. Everything went on lockdown and freeze, and the whole world obviously went through what it was doing. And they had decided not to cancel the Winter Games, and my visa was on delay. And yeah, finally it came through. It didn't come through to December, and I flew over, but like literally straight to work. But The Olympics didn't start till January or February, but I had to go and start the season at Park City and kind of learn my new job and my accommodation and kind of. So I started there. I'd never worked in a ski resort before. I don't know how to ski. I knew nothing about it. It looked cool on TV, but all of a sudden I'm at Deer Valley, which I've soon learned is one of the best ski resorts in the country, which ruined me because I thought all ski resorts
That was normal.
I did. I was like, oh, this is quite nice. You know, you've got these like really nice seafood restaurants and the clientele's really nice. And it's just, you know, later in life, you know, as I ski now, I know what a bummy ski hill is like. But I thought this was it. I was like, I can get used to this. I did. But I was like 26, 27 then, and learning to ski at that age, when you have fear, it's way different than all my friends I met there who learned to ski when they're 5. Like they're all like skiing backwards down hills and smoking blunts in the bushes and just like, you know, there's me like freaking pizza wedging down. I finally got better. I'm still a very timid skier, but yeah, that there was kind of ended up being a sous chef there at we had a seafood restaurant at the snow park. But we were doing great seafood there, and I was like, seafood in the middle of freaking Utah?
Yeah.
But we were getting the Honolulu seafood. We were getting fish flown in. We were getting hamachi, kampachi, and like had these sashimi stations and oyster stations, and it was like this live buffet of like really great seafood, which was really high-end stuff, which was really fun. Kind of that was my job. I worked Tuesday through Saturday, 2 till 10, so I had the mornings to ski. The nightlife didn't really kick off till 10 anyway, and
that's a pretty ideal schedule right there.
And you're in
too.
Park City, Utah, and it's freaking fun. If you've never been there, it's like an amazing food city, and they have Sundance and all that. But learned a lot about food, learned to ski, and then obviously the Olympics kicked in February, and that was when all the security came in, like big time. So I again got put onto, because we were at Deer Valley, we were hosting the moguls, the aerials, most of the skiing up there on the hill. So I was doing the VIP performers and sponsors. So I was at a separate lodge, which they'd done for the kind of hospitality suites of all these big sponsors. And then you've got Snow Park here. I'm half a mile down the road. Then you've got this massive security to get in and out. Like every time you took a van, they've got the mirrors underneath, the sniffer dogs. So you soon learned then, like, you got to make that one trip to get everything you need from that main production kitchen to get to your event. Because if you forget something, you're 2 hours, like, because there's a line.
Right.
So again, that's when you're like, okay, I got to go through every single part of my day right now. And you could be doing all these things, like, what do I need? What do I need to pick up? All those things, and then just go up there in your van, load it up, and then come back down and just hope to God you didn't forget anything. Because
Neil, we've had a lot of chefs on this show, and they all have amazing stories, and a lot of them have had really cool experiences moving around the country and working in these big cities. But Oliver's story of working on this famous cruise liner and then working at 2 Olympic Games is really kind of unbelievable. I mean, what an opportunity. You and I both push Gen Z or people we meet all the time. Go work in a restaurant. Like, it is some of the best experience you can get. Don't be an Uber driver or a Food Jets driver or get an Amazon driving job. Like, go work in a restaurant and learn how to work with people and get organized. You will learn so much. And Oliver's story really makes me feel like, man, if you get into the culinary world, like, if you can work hard and learn the craft, there are a lot of opportunities to work all over the world in amazing places, especially if you have your head screwed on right. Chefs will give your name to other chefs to go places, and you can still go anywhere in the world if you can be reliable and work hard.
Yeah, Oliver getting all these opportunities throughout the world because of working in the restaurant industry is just absolutely awesome. Let's lay this out in front of us. He's gotten to work on the QE2 doing the transatlantic route. He not only worked the Summer Olympics in Australia, the Winter Olympics in Utah. Like, what else is there to do at that point? I don't even know if there's any other check marks to do. Jumping back in, he spent another year after the Winter Olympics in Utah working his ski season before his visa expired and he went home back to London. Back in London, he got a little bit stir-crazy because as he was used to traveling all over the world and serving all these incredible people, he wanted to get back out and doing that. So He got a job with the Rosewood Hospitality Group and ended up being able to work in the Caribbean serving the likes of Robert De Niro and Sir Paul McCartney. That's pretty awesome if you ask me.
Yeah, Five Diamond Resort down in the Caribbean sounded pretty amazing. Then he got promoted to executive sous chef at the Carlisle Hotel, which is on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, overlooks Central Park. If you want to get an idea of this place, I just looked for a room rate for tonight on May 16th for just one adult, the smallest room they have. $972 a night before taxes and fees. Like, this is creme de la creme in New York City. And so you can imagine the type of food they had. He talked about they were flying in fresh fish from France. They were flying in truffles on the daily basis. Like, that level of food and execution and clientele. And he continued opportunities with that hotel group, getting to go be the executive chef of a restaurant and a boutique hotel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So a whole new experience there. Lived there for a few years, actually started a family, put down some roots, and then he just had this bug in his ear after getting all this produce from California that he wanted to go work in California. And so kind of on a whim, he started applying for jobs there and actually landed the job at the Citizen Hotel as the executive chef of that and the Grange restaurant, which we all know really well. So sight unseen, after a couple interviews, he and the family picked up and moved to Sacramento. And so we jump back into the interview asking the question that maybe a lot of people who don't love Sacramento the way we do might hear his story and say, what made you end up settling in Sacramento of all places with all the experiences you've had?
Like I said, I had a feeling, but I also felt, I'd worked in some really prominent cities, got some good experience, and a lot of these cities are very established, right? And a lot of big restaurants, a lot of big names, and a lot of, not that you can't make it anywhere, but it was just like, I felt that Sacramento had like everything you needed to be a good restaurant in regards to the location, the food source, like being so close to the food, the political element, and then also having that kind of small city feel, but you also are surrounded by really cool residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Often if you're living in New York or these major cities, you're going to end up in an apartment and you're going to be living that life. I had at the time 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I wanted to give them a quality of life too, and I felt that Sacramento offered that kind of elevated food opportunity, but also able to live in a neighborhood where you can have a backyard and have good schools. So that was really important to me initially, and also a city that was still trying to kind of reestablish itself too, and I thought it'd be cool if I could get in on that and just kind of be part of something and create an identity for myself, because I'd always had a sense of place, right? Wherever I went, I would always embrace that area, and like be at the Southwest, I did my version of Southwest cuisine, and in New York, you had that sort of modern French, and then you always kind of had a sense of place, right? But then coming to Sacramento, my sense of place and being in the position I was going to be my new identity, right? So it was kind of trying to become myself, and I felt that Grange and the Citizen, and through that interview process of what they wanted out of the restaurant, there wasn't a theme per se, other than, the premise was buy local, support this, support that, and then just go at it. So It was kind of having that blank canvas that also allowed me to kind of create my own kind of destiny, which at the time was still like, okay, what am I going to cook here?
Right.
I've got to kind of figure out my new style of cuisine here, or just let the juices flow. But so that was kind of, I just know there's just a lot of reasons to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been here 12 years now. Yeah, crazy.
That's amazing.
Kids are 14 and 12 now.
Yeah.
My son's almost taller than me.
Did you know when you started thinking about your own restaurant that you would go back to your roots a little bit and add a British flair to it? Or when you first, was that like, did you have a calling to maybe go back and introduce a little bit of that?
Well, it's funny, I feel like a lot of my career, like coming from England, and now I think London probably is one of the hottest culinary cities in the world right now. Like what's going on there right now is insane. There's so many cool concepts and restaurants, and such a renaissance for British food and produce and all of that. Like it's really been honored, and England has a bad rap, and I think living in America, and America's view of British food is always like kind of pretty bland and probably what I was eating with my mum, but which is still great stuff. But it's like it's never been sexy or cool, and so I always wanted something that I could have my personality in, which is obviously where I'm from, being English, and kind of reintroduce British food on my terms with a different, I've been in America almost half my life now. I've definitely got an American influence to what's going on. So definitely ingredients driven. We play with British fundamentals too. Like we'll do a chorizo Scotch egg, right? And right now I have a pie and mash in London, would be a nice hearty beef pie with mashed potatoes, which I'll do. And we sell out pies every day. But right now I'm doing a chili verde meat pie with roasted corn mash and so sometimes playing with some of the English things with some American influences. But yeah, I just needed to kind of start slowly thinking about British food and how I would introduce it. And it all started with the design of the restaurant too. We wanted something to feel something of kind of London haberdashery with all the design and the fabric, and kind of like where would an English geezer, like a gent, walk in and kind of what would he drink, what would he eat, what would he be wearing, that kind of mantra when we built the restaurant. So I started thinking about food that would work. And honestly, COVID really helped too, as much as that sounds funny, but we really got creative on food that we could do to go and to be picked up, and we had a bit more time, obviously. So we started making meat pies and pasties and started doing fish and chips on Fridays, and they would just sell the hell out. And we're like, oh, people really like this shit. So when we opened, we started doing fish and chips on Fridays, which is really busy. And we start doing house-made meat pies, which we sell out of every night, and because no one else is doing it, and they're not doing it authentically, right? It's not like, when you see those shitty Irish pubs with the shamrock on it, when it's really just a drinking bar with burgers and fries. And we were doing an elevated approach to British food that can often be viewed as pub food, but you start working with really key ingredients and doing it well, and then it becomes fine dining. So kind of revisiting the heritage is fun. And my sous chef, or my chef de cuisine, Jason, my number 2, he really enjoys looking at what British chefs are doing back home now and the Renaissance, and he'll come up with ideas. And he did a beautiful lamb Wellington the other day. He wants to do some of this sexy British stuff, and it's becoming quite fashionable. So
those meat pies have caused wars amongst servers because, no, I need to ring mine in before you ring yours in.
Bet, yes,
it can be 112 degrees and we all run out of meat pies. Yeah. Like, it's every night, how many do we have? And I'm like, you got 18. And then all of a sudden it's like, I've got that one on hold. Don't you sell that pie? I'm like,
that's me.
But yeah, so yeah, it's fun revisiting kind of British food culture and what comes with it too. Indian culture is huge in England. So we'll do chicken tikka masala, or we'll do like a curry lamb pasty for lunch, and we'll do kind of plays on Indian food too, because that's such a big part of our culture too. So just like Mexican food is to Americans, Indian food is to the Brits. So we'll kind of influence with that too. And I get excuses to do all kinds of stuff, really. I can run a gumbo, right? I spent 6 months in New Orleans. I can do a 9-spice cowboy ribeye because I spent 3 years in Santa Fe. I have so many influences in my journey that I can just kind of do that. And it might not be British, but you know what? I spent time doing it. So this is my twist on that. So,
and like you said, it's your canvas.
Yeah.
Right. So on that as well, though, I think, how do you balance that with also having to sort of give the people what they want? There's a lot of hits in Sacramento across the sort of that the level of restaurant where Camden is and all those places are. So how do you do both, and are you allowed to experiment? Do you feel like you're allowed to experiment as much as you want to?
You can, here? And sort of I think of our restaurant as like a brasserie that you would find in Europe, which is like an elevated everyday restaurant, right? Especially with my location next to the Golden One Center, next to the Capitol, being in the financial district. And you've got to know your audience, right? Like, I can't not have a Caesar salad on my menu. It'd be suicide, right? It's like saying I'm not going to do Tito's and soda behind the bar, right? Like, I think even Brett, our bar manager, has learned too. He can have that creative side and do what you want to do with your drinks, but you've got to have a solid old fashioned. These things pay the bills. So I always have a Caesar salad on the menu. what do we have that's kind of like we do sausage rolls, but it's very us.
Yeah.
But like it's appropriate. Yeah, it's a balance. You've just got, we always have a hand-cut pasta on the menu or a stuffed pasta that's kind of might have a bit of whimsy to it, but it's a pasta, right? People, I know, because I want Adventurous Eater to come in and maybe try something different, but I also know that he might be with someone that's not so adventurous. So you just kind of have to look at that and know your location and have enough confidence that your pride isn't broken by that, right? Like, have a Caesar salad, make it a fucking good Caesar salad. It's okay to have a Caesar salad. I'm not doing a tasting menu. There's other restaurants in town that are doing really well. Some chefs that are really pushing boundaries right now, and they've managed to corner that market with exclusive tasting menus at high-end prices, which they're educating Sacramentans on that we are, an elevated food city, and they've taken that route, and which is awesome. But my restaurant is that kind of brasserie feel, and it is the locate. If I was to start really honing in and just doing stuff that I thought was cool versus not allowing other people to come in and maybe get a great hamburger as well, knowing that the Kings are playing, I've got to capitalize on these businesses. So always a great burger, always a great Caesar, usually a solid steak, something that the non-foodie like person could at least relate to and feel safe with, but there might be something else on the menu that, like a pate en croûte or some grilled octopus or something that maybe someone might not eat every day, but they could be tempted with. And so it's that fine balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or rabbit meat pie, which is...
Yeah, we did the rabbit meat pie. It slowed them down for a minute. It's funny, like this chili verde one we're doing right now is so freaking insanely busy. My chef de cuisine the other day, he's like, it's time for the rabbit pie, chef. Like, we would sell still like 8 to 12 versus 20 to 30 a night. Like, rabbit's not everyone's cup of tea, although it tasted like chicken. We did rabbit with bacon and mushrooms and leeks. It tasted divine, but people start thinking of thumper and
I love it. It was it's one of my favorite things I've had in the city to this point, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'll bring it back.
And it was so funny because I could tell as someone who's worked in restaurants when the server, I was like, we'll get the meat pie. And she kind of she paused for a beat and she was like, so just so you know, the meat in there tonight is rabbit. And I was with a buddy who's we were like, all the better. Like, bring it on.
Yeah.
You could see the PTSD of having told other diners.
What was her name? She's fired.
Yeah, I was going to say.
She should have been, and tonight we've got rabbit.
Yeah. It's
probably, I'm not going to mention it.
Yeah, no.
But I can see who it was.
Probably also speaks to my level of sophistication on appearance that she probably looked at me and was like, this dude's gonna change his mind and order a
She's
burger.
Like, this guy's going to have a burger and a Caesar salad. It's funny, like, we've done this chili verde thing, and it's like it's fun, right? It's kind of broken the mold a little bit, and we've had some fun with it. Jason wants to do a Philly cheesesteak pie, but I'm not sure how I can that might be a little bit too dirty.
That would be dirty, but I could see that selling like
He's like, we could do it with a cheese pour over.
Okay, that's right. Exactly. I went to get a cheese whiz pour over.
You give them an idea, and then they start getting crazy.
Yeah. Give a mouse a cookie.
I know. He's like, what about birria? I'm like, we could do a
now we're
birria.
talking,
Because you have that kind of you could do the birria filling in the pie, and then the dip pour over.
There we go.
It'd be like a reverse dip, kind of.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we'll do
it. I like it.
And birria's lamb, is it, or goat?
Goat.
Typically, yeah.
There we go.
Something different. There's always a ton of goats around.
Yeah. Do you miss getting to cook more? Are you sort of obviously as the owner of a restaurant, you're probably in the kitchen in the mess less than you were years ago. Or has it been a long time running hotels, or is it I've done that. I'm happy to sort of suggest recipes, get my team set up, and
I'm trying to find that balance. Now, I think COVID put me back a couple of years, and kind of reopening essentially required, and the staffing landscape changed dramatically. So I've been in the kitchen a lot, and I've enjoyed it, and I've been in there too much, honestly. I'm trying to pull myself out more so now. I think I've been on the line. I can bang. We've had some really busy nights where we've just kind of been evolving and growing, and luckily we have just been growing and growing. But I've got to rest on the fact that maybe we are hopefully going to be successful and people do enjoy like coming to us. And yes, you're going to have a slow week and you are going to have a slow month in summer, but it is going to come back. Therefore, I shouldn't be so shy about leveling up the staff. I think you're only as good as the position you're working. And I think oftentimes I do get sucked into positions based on not having enough staff sometimes because of the fluctuation of the business. So I'm trying to let Jason maybe run a lot more of the kitchen, but give him the support that he needs, be it maybe some more management help in there, because it's a disservice to my general manager and my bar manager and the rest of the team if I'm just stuck in on the line all the time. I'm not managing the business essentially.
Yeah.
And our restaurant has reached a point where people do know who we are and they want to speak to the chef, and I need to be walking around the dining room and doing the kind of the dog and pony thing for a while, but also spending time with the other managers too, like working with them on ideas that they have, because I'm essentially going to help them execute whatever their visions be. And, so I think that's where I'm trying to grow right now. But yes, I've been in the kitchen a lot, but moving out of it, obviously I'm still the restaurant's not huge. I can still have a big involvement on the day-to-day, but I don't want to be kind of stuck on the line. I'd like to start growing, marketing. I handle the social media too, which we've had some fun with over the last couple of weeks too, which we're starting to grow too. But yeah, kind of more business acumen and still get my hands dirty when I need to, but not have to be needed on the line. So do I cook? Yeah, sometimes it's out a bit of essential, but when we have a new idea like that chili verde pie, kind of get in there and start working on new techniques and started playing around with something before we go live with it. So it's definitely still doing that.
Cool.
I can tell you as a server working with him, it is kind of fun when we're getting busy and you see Oliver hop back there and it's very much like, no, everyone's working right now. Like, step up and do it. And so it's kind of fun to see like him jump in with salads and start making like 8 steak tartars at once. It's like, no, if he's jumping back there and do it, we can all step up and do something. So it is inspiring for us, just so you know, on our back end. We do see
for sure. It got a lot last season. Thankfully we were so busy, but between the holiday season and the Kings just changing.
Yeah, I bet
suddenly becoming good.
And we were just getting slammed every night. And at that point, being so sucked in, it's hard to hire when you're not really focused on hiring because you're so busy. And then all of a sudden you're like, I've just got to do it. But I definitely kind of came out of that season like, yeah, I can do it, but this is not going to last forever. This is not sustainable. I need to just kind of level in there, and
you have to make sure you keep the GM's ear of the Kings now too, and be like,
yeah, we've got a great relationship with the Kings. We really
can't go through another 20-year drought. Like this is how I need it to be.
I know, like you built this big castle, you built Doko, you built everything, and then we just had a couple of questionable seasons, and then finally last year or this year it was just like, oh
yeah.
And what a transformation for the city, and downtown was just ridiculous.
You could see it at the restaurant. It was no longer who's in town to play the Kings, but like people coming in with Kings jerseys, not Warriors jerseys or Cavs jerseys or Laker jerseys. It was all Kings in there. It was really fun to see.
Like the dining room would be full,
packed,
and people were just like having a full-on dinner before going in there, and just the vibe was amazing, and yeah, everyone was just really excited. The bar, the restaurant, just the street outside, and yeah, it was fun.
And the beam. Everyone would run outside and see the beam. Yep.
That was one of the most brilliant pieces of marketing I've ever seen in my life, like that.
My neighbor, who's also on the sponsorship side, but he's not directly in marketing, but it's kind of around his office, and I always joke with him. I'm like, does some kid just like, hey man, like I got this idea, like when we win, like if we have a big purple laser in the sky, and someone was like, sure.
Yeah.
Find me the laser.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Like made international news.
It did.
It made Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
People
like
we made it on the back end. We made it for the shittiness, and now we're making it for the greatness.
I know. It's amazing.
But yeah, the beam's awesome.
Yeah.
And just hearing the chant too.
Oh, I love it.
It's like
when you know you're
like
enough points up at the end of the game, and people just start going,
right.
And it pisses off the opposition team. They're just like, fuck you and your beam.
Yeah. All right.
Rapid fire?
Rapid fire.
Let's do it.
Uh-oh.
Rapid fire food-related questions. First one is, what is your favorite cheap guilty pleasure?
God. I love pizza, and living in California, it's got to be In-N-Out.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
What is your favorite food movie?
My favorite food movie, Ratatouille. Yeah, I love Ratatouille. I think that really just summed it all up. It was just chef was great with John
Favreau.
John Favreau.
Yep. That was a close second, but I really Ratatouille was a good one.
What is your favorite dish to cook at home?
Something my kids will eat.
Yeah.
Honestly, they both are so fussy and they don't eat the same. Like one of them likes mashed potatoes, one likes rice. Neither of them like the other one. So a winning dish, if I'm making it at home, will be pasta. Some kind of pasta with a nice meat sauce, a salad and garlic bread. And watching them humbly eat more of something that I've created gives me joy. But yeah, I have to play to the audience. So pasta... might not be my favorite thing to cook, but it's definitely the most rewarding knowing that it's going to be enjoyed by the audience.
There is something extra fulfilling about you when your kids really gobble up something.
It is like when they're that
like,
age, teenagers, and they're scoffing. Like it is a rewarding thing because my wife will often give me shit like you always cook the same stuff. Like try something new, but if I do, they're not going to eat it, and then I'll get frustrated, and then it's a waste, and it's like. So I will every now and then, but like if it's only like a Monday's typically my night to cook because I'm home and they're home. I'll try and do like a winner,
Yeah.
But yeah, pasta usually seems to please everyone.
So say like it's a Monday or Tuesday night and you want to go out in town. Where's someplace you want to give a little bit of love to? Like where do you like to go to eat?
Consistently, I enjoy Hook and Ladder. Galise is the chef there. He's definitely, he cooks the kind of food I like. He spent a lot of time in New York there. He's had some influences from chefs I like, and he has that kind of got a big Spanish influence to what he does, and his food's always kind of creatively Moorish. I just want to eat a lot of it, so I enjoy Hook and Ladder as it's down the street from me, and I feel that it's like pub environment in there, but it's like you can get a really elevated drink and you can get an elevated dish in an environment that's welcoming. So yeah, that kind of gets me going.
Yeah.
A few people have said Hook and Ladder.
Yeah.
And I like Sushi Q too. And
love Sushi
Q. I think that, that place is, don't sleep on that if you want good sushi. It's right in a strip mall and on Florin Road right there in Southland Park.
Near CalFit.
By CalFit.
All the good food around CalFit.
Man, the quality of their fish and their execution of the food is really good too. But yeah.
What's a dish from your childhood you wish you could go back in time and eat?
Let me think. There's two, right? Having divorced parents. From my mum, just her bangers and mash, like good old pork sausages, like her really unrefined chunky mash and freezer peas and onion gravy. Just something really good about it. And then my father... Just one of his Sunday roasts, he would do like a chestnut mushroom and cranberry pie with like roast potatoes and roast carrots and all these like fall vegetables and some kind of whole grain mustard gravy. It was always just like a real adventure of vegetables and textures, just, some real good British stodge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we ever done bangers and mash at Camden?
We haven't. Chris was talking about it the other day. He goes, you need to do those banger things you like over there. And I'm like, bangers and mash? He goes, that one, yeah. I'm like, yeah, well, but I need a sausage stuffer. I need to. Like the sausage that we use in the sausage rolls is actually essentially a banger mix. But I would like to do kind of maybe more of a heritage pig of sorts and do like an elevated sausage and mash. I think that would be a nice, maybe going into the fall.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. All right.
That was awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me up here. It's been a minute. I'm glad our schedule's lined up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was great to have you.
No, this was fun. Thank you so much.
Well, Neil, that was quite the story. And for the listeners, we pulled a lot of the story out as well. We talked to Oliver for probably an hour and a half. And you got the gist where he's been, but it is an unbelievable adventure to land in Sacramento, and that's a real point of pride for me as someone who's lived here 20 years. I think Oliver being a transplant to Sacramento and really embracing it and understanding all it has to offer is a really powerful example of what this city has for people. And I love all the locals we've had, and I love the local Sacramento pride. of chefs we've had as well, but it is cool to see someone who has traveled all over the world and had all these amazing opportunities, not only to decide to settle in Sacramento, but to realize, like, this is the place to be. Like, this is an amazing spot to be from a family standpoint and from a culinary standpoint. And it just kind of makes me smile to listen back to his interview and hear his story and know that we have him here in Sacramento.
I couldn't agree more. You took the words right out of my mouth. I think it gives Sacramento a lot of credence in the fact that this guy has jet-setted all around the world, yet chooses to stay here. And if you want to hear these stories, I cannot recommend enough for you guys to go into Camden and go and sit at the chef's counter with him. As great as a chef as Oliver is, as you were just listening to the last hour, he is a wonderful storyteller. And he is absolutely captivating, and he really gets that accent going and knows how to use it. But he's just fun to sit there and listen to talk, and to have the chef sit there and explain his dishes to you and why. There's just nothing better than that. And Oliver is a perfect example of that, as someone who not only can do that, but enjoys doing that too.
I should note as well, we did this interview about 6 months ago, so some of the food-specific things, that chili verde pie, for example, meat pie that he was doing, not currently what's on the menu at Camden, so don't listen to this and run out and hope to get a chili verde meat pie. I'm not sure what they're doing now. Maybe they're doing the birria we talked about. Who knows? But take a look at the menu before you go over there, because this was a totally different season when we did this interview.
That being said, go in and see what he's doing. Who knows what kind of creativity he's got going on now.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Dine 16. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, wherever you listen. You can listen on YouTube. You can comment there. You can reach out to us on Instagram. The handle is @Dine16. Please share this episode with friends, family, people in Sacramento, anyone you know in the food community, or anyone who likes to eat food, which is everyone. Please share this with people in Sacramento. That's how the show's going to grow. That's how we're going to continue to bring you episodes. That's how we're eventually going to be able to do live events and other fun things we have planned. So share away. Just share the website, dine16.com. That's the easiest way to send it to somebody if you don't know how to do it via one of the podcast apps.
Also, if you think you've got a fun story of work in the restaurant industry, please let us know you want to come on. We would love to have you come on.
Absolutely. Our opening and closing theme music are by my brother-in-law, Mark Owens. The Dine 16 is a production of the Hear Me Now studio in Citrus Heights, California. In 2 weeks, we'll have a new episode for you. We are going from an established, big, fine dining restaurant to a wonderful, small window spot that is pumping out some of my favorite sandwiches you can find in Sacramento. I literally, I'm like pretty sure I'm going to get one of these sandwiches right now after this interview is over, because I've been starving for one of the sandwiches ever since we did the interview a few days ago. In a couple weeks, we'll have a guest on for you talking about his history, his culture, and his amazing sandwiches. Tune in to find out who that is in 2 weeks. Keep an eye on your podcast app and Instagram for the drop. Until then, as always, eat something you love with someone you love.